most important thing about filmmaking I wish I knew when I started was you make your own limitations. So coming from a film school background, there's certain things you're taught that it takes you a while to break away from. I wish I knew that you set your own boundaries. I wish I knew that from the start. I'd love to say I've always wanted to be a cinematographer. That's not the case. After high school, I went and studied photography. So I started out in photography, and then after that, I realized there was something called cinematography. And I told my parents I want to go study at a film school. And they enrolled me. They were like, so their whole thing was, you can do whatever you want to do, just make sure you get a degree and make sure you go to the best school. So we researched and we found a school which was supposedly the best school in the country, or perhaps even in the continent. And I went and studied cinematography, and I haven't stopped. First of all, I think the fact that I did photography gave me a huge advantage in cinematography. I think understanding lenses, understanding mood, because with photography, you're still trying to tell some form of a story. It's just you don't have motion accompanying your image, but you do know about contrast. I mean, you learn about contrast in photography, so you know if you light a character from one side, there's certain shadow fall off. So photography assisted me a lot in being able to create moods with cinematography. So, and having to understand lenses, depth of field, and even processing, because when I started out in photography, I was shooting on film, and I learnt about things that when I got to film school, most of my classmates didn't know about. I mean, processing techniques like bleach bypass and cross-processing. So I got to film school and I knew about bleach bypass, which they don't necessarily teach at school actually, because they kind of don't want you to do it because it's a much more expensive process as well. So at film school, I was the only person who would bleach bypass their films because I learned it in photography. I get a lot of inspiration from films I watch and certain DOPs and directors that I follow. When I was at photography school, I watched a film called Hero, Asian film shot by Christopher Doyle, and the images were just incredible. Like, I was absolutely blown away by what I was seeing on screen. It amplified his stories so well. So I get a lot of inspiration from cinematographers. There's a guy called Bradford Young. Bradford Young, I haven't seen anyone shoot black skin tones better than him in my life. He shoots black skin tones incredible. So I get a lot of inspiration from that. His lighting is exceptional too. Like, it's so natural, but I mean, you can see it's lit, but it's exceptional. So I get a lot of inspiration from photography and from other cinematographers. At the moment, I am currently in pre-production for a film. I'm going to be shooting a feature film with lots of working titles at the moment. Feelings, Vladimir of Johannesburg. So I'm currently in pre-production for a film I'm going to be shooting, and currently in pre-production for a commercial that I shoot next week. Experiences I can draw from some of the recent work I've been doing is recently, about a year and a half ago, finished a feature film called Tina Sobabili, which contributed a lot in getting the crew members' names out there. We were a relatively young, independent crew. We ran out and we shot a feature film in 7 days. We broke every film rule. We were shooting 18 hours, but we were just excited. I mean, and that was my second feature film. The first one was also we ran around 6 years ago with a 5D in Yeovil, and we shot a film called Scaife, which was really exciting. It helped to give us the confidence that actually we can make a feature film. So with Tina Sobabili, we've just been shocked and surprised by how much the film has has grown and it's spread our wings, and the film has like traveled to places we didn't even know existed. How I think you can tell great stories with equipment limitations. I think stories start off with, I think first of all, if you have a really good script, it's the beginning of you being able to tell a great story. So equipment, I'm more of a lens person. I think people always go on about expensive cameras, and I think the best stories are told with the best lenses. So as much as lenses are expensive, but often people focus on getting the best camera. I always feel if you have a good camera and great lenses, it's a better way to tell stories. And stories are supposed to come across as being natural. So if you're shooting stories with less lights, that means it's less commercial, first of all. Naturally makes it look realer. I think that's a great way to take away finance and money from trying to make films and rather focus on story, good lenses, and natural lighting. Because you spend a lot of money on, and also we're at a point now where rigs are easier to build. I have friends who build themselves like rigs out of the weirdest things, where instead of getting a steady cam, you can get a friend who's like a mechanical engineer to build you some form of a rig. Dollies and tracks are easier. I have friends who take like pipes and they build tracks out of those. So limitations can't stop you from telling good stories anymore. We've passed that. There's smaller cameras now as well that don't cost as much, and the fact that we're not shooting on film anymore also allows us to be able to make films cheaper. So we have less of an excuse now about equipment and not having enough money. People are making films out of cell phones now, so infinite possibilities again, yeah. There isn't a set way of making films. And I think the fact that experimental films exist mean that sometimes I think you can make films that only you and your friends will understand, but if your friends think it's great, then that's good. I don't think there's a right or wrong way of making films. I think it's subject to interpretation. To be an African filmmaker today, it means we are definitely in a position that we have never been in before. Over the last 10 years, I'd say, you have more and more African films being noticed internationally. Making films is not as expensive as it used to be. Coming with our history as Africans of, we haven't always had the resources. Africans have the best stories to tell. I don't think the word passion is stressed enough, As soon as you coming into the industry because you want to be famous or you want to be known, and you're entering the industry because you're cool or you want to be cool, you've already lost. The best advice I feel I've received is do what you love. To do what I love and make sure I try and become one of the best at it so I can make a living out of it. So when I decided to become a filmmaker, I made it my plan A, B, and C. And I knew then that there's no turning back. So the best advice I have received is go for what you love doing. And I think naturally, if you're talented, people can't run away from you forever. You'll be given a chance if people see the passion as well,